The wind howled as Samuel pulled his coat tighter around his shoulders, staring up at the foreboding silhouette of the abandoned asylum. The stormy night cast eerie shadows on the building's decaying facade, broken windows resembling hollow eyes staring back at him. He hesitated at the gate, the iron grating rusted and bent, as if it too had tried to escape the horrors within. "This is it," Samuel muttered to himself, clutching a worn map and a flickering flashlight. "The place where it all began." As he stepped inside, the atmosphere shifted. The air grew colder, carrying the faint scent of dampness and decay. His footsteps echoed through the empty corridors, the sound swallowed by the darkness. Every creak of the floorboards, every rustle of the wind seemed to whisper secrets long forgotten. His heart pounded with a mix of excitement and trepidation. He had always been drawn to the unknown, but tonight felt different. There was a heavy weight in the air, an unspoken warning. In a cluttered room filled with the remnants of a bygone era, Samuel's flashlight beam danced across dusty furniture and forgotten trinkets. He was about to move on when the light caught something unusual. An old, dusty trunk sat in the corner, its lid slightly ajar. With a creak, he opened the trunk and found an antique doll inside. Its porcelain face, though cracked, still bore a haunting beauty. The doll's blue eyes seemed to pierce through the darkness, staring directly at him. Samuel felt an inexplicable connection to the doll, as if it were calling out to him. "What are you doing here?" he whispered, gently lifting the doll from the trunk. Its craftsmanship was exquisite, but there was something unsettling about it. The doll seemed almost alive. He turned it over in his hands, noting the delicate stitching of its clothes and the lifelike quality of its features. A shiver ran down his spine. He knew he should leave it behind, but something compelled him to keep it. Placing the doll carefully in his backpack, he couldn't shake the feeling that he had just made a fateful decision. Samuel set up camp in the asylum's library, surrounded by ancient tomes and dusty shelves. The room was filled with the scent of old paper and a lingering sense of abandonment. As he examined the doll, the feeling of unease grew stronger. The shadows seemed to move, twisting and turning in the corners of his vision. "It's just my imagination," he told himself, trying to focus on his research. But the doll's unblinking gaze made it hard to concentrate. He placed it on a nearby table, but even then, it felt like it was watching him. The night deepened, and the oppressive silence of the asylum pressed down on him. The flickering candlelight cast dancing shadows on the walls, creating an eerie atmosphere. Samuel lay on his makeshift bed, staring at the ceiling, unable to sleep. The doll's presence was like a dark cloud hanging over him, filling his mind with thoughts of the asylum's sinister past. "What have I gotten myself into?" he wondered, feeling a chill that had nothing to do with the cold. The first night, Samuel was plagued by vivid nightmares. In his dream, the asylum was alive with activity. Patients in tattered gowns roamed the halls, their faces twisted in pain and madness. Sinister doctors performed cruel experiments, their expressions devoid of empathy. The doll appeared throughout the dream, its eyes following him everywhere. He woke in a cold sweat, heart pounding. The room was dark and the doll sat where he had left it, but it seemed to have moved slightly. Samuel's breath caught in his throat. "This can't be real," he whispered. But the fear was palpable. He reached for his flashlight, casting its beam around the room. Nothing. just shadows and silence, but the doll's unblinking eyes seemed to mock his fear. Determined to understand the doll's origins, Samuel delved into the asylum's archives. He found old records and journals detailing the history of the asylum and its infamous Dr. Blake. The doctor was notorious for his unethical experiments, and one entry in particular caught Samuel's eye. The journal mentioned a doll used in rituals to transfer the suffering of patients into an object, meant to contain their pain and madness. Samuel's hands shook as he read the entries, the ink smudged but still legible. Could this be the same doll? He wondered aloud. The more he read, the more he felt the weight of the doll's tragic history pressing upon him. It wasn't just an artifact. It was a vessel for the asylum's darkest secrets. While exploring the basement, Samuel discovered a hidden compartment in the wall. Inside, he found a diary wrapped in stained cloth. As he began to read, ghostly figures of former patients started to appear around him, their translucent forms barely visible in the dim light. The air grew colder, and Samuel felt their anguish as if it were his own. The spirits reached out to him, their faces reflecting pain and longing. "What do you want from me?" Samuel cried, backing away. But the spirits did not answer. They simply hovered, bound to the doll, their silent pleas echoing in the darkness. Samuel discovered a detailed sketch of the doll in the diary, showing its creation from the personal belongings of different patients. Each piece carried a fragment of their soul, and the annotations revealed the dark purpose behind its construction. As he read by flashlight, the shadows around him seemed to deepen. The delicate features of the doll and the tragic history it held became clearer. Samuel's fascination grew, mingling with revulsion as he uncovered the horrifying secrets documented within. To free the spirits, I must perform the ritual, he realized, his voice barely above a whisper. The weight of this revelation settled heavily on his shoulders. Determined to free the trapped spirits, Samuel gathered the items mentioned in the diary: a ceremonial dagger, candles, and a book of incantations. He set up the ritual space in the asylum's chapel, the air thick with the scent of old paper and wax. As he prepared, his hands shook slightly, but his resolve was firm. The spirits watched silently, their faces filled with a mix of fear and anticipation. Samuel knew this was their only chance for peace. "This has to work," he muttered, lighting the candles and placing the doll in the center of the circle. The flickering flames cast an eerie glow on the doll's porcelain face. As Samuel held the ceremonial dagger above the doll, he began to chant the incantation from the book. The room seemed to pulse with energy, the air growing thick and heavy. The spirits drew closer, their forms more defined and their expressions filled with hope. "Release them!" Samuel chanted, his voice echoing through the empty halls. Each word felt like it carried the weight of the asylum's history. He felt a connection to the spirits, their pain and suffering intertwined with his own. As the ritual reached its climax, the doll began to change. Its porcelain skin cracked, and the glow in its eyes faded. The transformation was both eerie and beautiful, as if the doll was shedding its malevolent past. Samuel watched in awe as the spirits' forms started to dissipate, their faces showing relief and gratitude. "It's working," he whispered, tears streaming down his face. The oppressive atmosphere of the asylum lifted, replaced by a gentle warmth, The doll, once a vessel of pain, now lay lifeless. A bright, ethereal light enveloped the room as the spirits ascended, finally free from their torment. Samuel watched, tears in his eyes, understanding the gravity of what he had accomplished. The air was filled with a gentle warmth, and the oppressive atmosphere of the asylum lifted. "They're free," he said softly, feeling a profound sense of peace. The spirits' expressions showed relief and gratitude, their forms becoming lighter and more ethereal until they disappeared completely. Samuel sat alone in the now silent basement, the doll lying lifeless beside him. His expression was one of quiet reflection and weary relief. The soft light of dawn filtered through a small window, casting a gentle glow on his features. "It's over," he sighed, knowing that the spirits were finally at peace. The room was serene and still, a stark contrast to the chaos that had unfolded moments before. The doll, now just an inanimate object, no longer held any power. Samuel stood up, ready to leave the asylum and its dark history behind. But as he walked away, he couldn't help but wonder what other secrets the world still held, waiting to be uncovered.